Hello world of YouTube. This thing here is a storage heater. I don't have gas in this property, so this is my main source of heating. It runs on economy 7, and not only does it not look very good, it doesn't put out much heat, so I don't actually use this heater at all. I don't particularly like the look of it either, and rather than rip it out and have some wiring left over there in the corner, I thought I'd go about and build a storage heater cover or radiator cover. So if that sounds appealing to you, stick around and see what I built in part 1. So the first thing to do after taking measurements was to move into SketchUp and try my hand at that. This was a rough idea that I came out with. It didn't stick out too far and it matched the same height as the sofa, so I thought visually it would look good. I had this piece of 8x4 MDF delivered earlier on in the month, and placing it on the table saw, I decided I would cut it down with my circular saw first. I placed this bit of plywood underneath to protect the table saw from the circular saw blade, and then measuring where I wanted to cut, I placed my circular saw guide across the MDF, clamping it into position, and then made the 2 cuts that I needed. Should have put the dust extraction on really, didn't realise quite how much dust would kick out. And then it was just setting about cutting the 2 pieces that I cut down to the required measurements for each individual piece. I could have made this from 1 piece for the front, but then it would have used a lot more MDF, and this way is much more economical. When it comes to cutting the top parts of the heater cover, which I'm going to call the rails, I just made a temporary fence up with an offcut of MDF and then slid the pieces across to it, and then using the mitre gauge just cut them to the required length. So here's all the parts laid out in the correct order, and I could set about marking up for the biscuit joints that I wanted to cut. So using my new Ozito biscuit jointer that I'd had for my birthday, I could get on with making my first biscuit joints. I was quite impressed with this biscuit jointer. It's obviously the first one I've owned, so I wasn't sure what quite to expect from a biscuit jointer, but this performed flawlessly and everything I wanted it did perfectly. So then I glued all the pieces together, ensuring that they roughly lined up, because I knew I would come back and check for squareness and correct spacing later. I also got the opportunity to use my new bar clamps. They've been in the garage for 6 months, I've not used them at all, so these were ideal for clamping the project up with. I checked everything was square with my quick square and then clamped up into position tightly once I knew they were correct. I could check the measurements with my measuring tape that they were equal both sides, which they were, and I left it dry up. Once it dried, I got the router out with a chamfer bit on and cut the chamfer into 2 lower squares. When it came to cutting the feet out, I just marked up how high I wanted the feet cut and how far in, and then used this paint pot to draw the curve. And I just cut that out with the jigsaw. As you can see here, the bottom part did become detached from the rest of it, so I just ended up gluing that back up after scraping the glue off, and once I finished the feet. So now I could clamp the sides into position and mark them up for where I wanted to cut the biscuits. And then go ahead and cut them again on the biscuit jointer. So with another big squeeze of glue, I place the biscuits into position and set about putting the side of the heater cover on. Once I was happy with it, I checked for squareness and then clamped it back into position. So this is the first time I've had a chance to offer it up to the heater to check for fit. And as you can see here from this picture, one issue I knew I would get would be the back of the heater cover hitting the skirting board, and I was undecided which way I wanted to go. But I decided to add some feet to the bottom of the heater to raise it up, and then I could just cut the radiator back into it. So I cut some more biscuit joints and then set about gluing and clamping the feet back into position. So everyone's favourite task next moved on to sanding, and I started off with 80 grit and worked my way up all the way to 400 grit. I did go over the edges and the corners ever so slightly just to take the harshness out of them. So then I moved on to gluing the panels into position. With a bead of glue around the outside of the square, I could put the cut panel into position and then fire in a few brads. Then I moved on to putting what I'm calling the rails in. Similar to how I put the panels in, I just put the glue in, and then using these spacers that I'd pre-cut to 15mm so that every space was equal, I put the rails into position, fired a couple of brads into the top and bottom to hold them in place whilst they glued up. And then I could put some more spacers in between and put the next piece on. And I just worked my way across really. And then whilst it all dried up, I was left with something looking like this. So after everything had dried up, I now moved into the house and checked for fit again, which I was really happy with, and this was what I was left with. Part 2 of this video will be out next Sunday, so if you want to see the finished outcome, please watch it. Thanks for watching this video. Consider subscribing to my channel. Please like and share amongst your friends, and I'll see you again.